Recently, Radio Times Gaming were invited to a preview event for Atomfall at the Woodman pub in London, which had been turned into the Grendel's Head. And not only did I get to play the game, I also got to sit down with creative lead at Rebellion Development's Ben Fisher for an interview about Atomfall. Previously, a snippet of this could be seen in our Atomfall preview, and I really recommend you give that a watch if you haven't already. And as for the gameplay footage, we'll be posting that in full so you can see exactly what we got up to with our time in Atomfall. But let's get to that interview. Well, Atomfall, we're here, it's almost out. If you'd like to introduce yourself for the audience at home, give us a little background on what you do for Atomfall.
Okay, I'm Ben Fisher, Head of Design for Rebellion, and I've been working as kind of creative director on Atomfall. So the project's been quite experimental. We've tried a load of different things over the course of the game. My job has been to bring it together into one unified vision, help push it towards the game that we can see today.
Grand stuff. And a lot of comparisons, sort of game design-wise, have been made to games like Fallout and Stalker. And how would you say Atomfall sets itself apart from other titles like that?
Sure. There is kind of a nuclear quarantine subgenre, you could say, and Atomfall does fit within that, but it's a slightly different interpretation to Fallout, Stalker, Metro, triggered by the Rebellion creative DNA. What we tend to do is a more densely concentrated experience. We value that sandbox freedom, that sense of openness and self-determination. So what sets Atomfall apart is so much of the tone of the game comes from the setting. So it's set in 1960s, north of England, meaning that it's not as much of a run-and-gun battle as you might see in a game set in a war zone or a game set in America. So there's much more of a blend of kind of melee and ranged combat. Fights are much more optional. The characters are kind of eclectic British trope characters that you might come across in the game. And the other sort of differentiating factor is you're much more of a detective in this game. We don't have a traditional quest system. Instead, we've got leads, so you're piecing together an understanding of this game world and how it fits together. And you're never told like the good option and the bad option. There's not any single morally justified character. It's all shades of grey, and it's all to do with how you feel about dealing with the situation, who you think you can trust, those sorts of things. So a lot of that came from the storytelling style of 1950s, 1960s UK. That kind of early Doctor Who, Quatermass Experiment, bits of John Wyndham, also, setting it a bit wider, things like Prisoner, things like The Wicker Man. Yes. that kind of tense moral ambiguity, a murky situation where people are just trying to survive. So that's tonally very different as well. Yeah, I have to, just on that tonally, I did feel like I would turn around a corner and see the famous five sacrificing someone or something trying to survive. Exactly.
And on that sort of British tropes, I was going around and I was very reminded of Greendale, and I thought, how would Postman Pat survive in the quarantine? Do you reckon he would have a good chance? Or?
I think he would. I mean, we've got bandits in the game who have police hats, so a swap to Postman Pat with a bit of war paint. Very, very nice.
Yeah, he'll do anything to protect Jess, I can imagine.
I think by 5 years in, he'll be wearing Jess's skin somewhere.
Well, maybe. Rest in peace, Jess.
Rest in peace, Jess.
For you, during development as the sort of lead of design, when for you, or what was it when you felt that the game really clicked? Like that sort of flow and the pacing of it, you're like, okay, we're on to something now.
I mean, it was very, very experimental, the whole process. There was an earlier version of the game which was a little more linear. It was more like a Metroidvania game. So you made your way through a sequence of sandbox maps, and you entered dungeons that gave you the tools required to unlock new locations. The story was more choreographed, and it was lots of fun, but it felt like we could really lean into the creative pillars of the game by opening the whole thing up, making it all optional, letting the player kill everyone or no one, and arranging the content of the game with kind of faith that the player should probably find a good amount of it and have a meaningful experience by running through the game in that structure. So that's really when it came to life. Oh, great.
For you, what are you most excited for players to discover in the game? Is there something that you've worked on that like you've maybe you can't talk about here, but is there something that you're really excited for players to find out?
I mean, my fingers are on every pie in the game, but the thing that I'm really looking forward to players experiencing is something that we kind of didn't directly plan for, but leaned into once we discovered it in the game. That was the aspect of the leads system where as you're poking your way into understanding how the game world works, your perspective on who is trustworthy and isn't, that changes over time. So there are kind of murky situations that you might find yourself in, like there's something a bit like a murder mystery in part of the game. But the more you learn about the situation, the more messy and complicated it gets. And it touches on other situations, so whatever you start to interact with in the game world leads to everything else. So it's a really rich and interesting structure.
Yeah. And because the game is so thoroughly and quintessentially British, or British of a time period, I was quite curious to know how you've gone about localizing that for like an international audience, like keeping those references, or if you mostly just focus on having like dubs or subs and just kind of hoping that people will get the references or just at least enjoy them.
Yeah, I mean, what's helped in that regard is our art director is from Seattle, and we did have discussions about this, and do we want to soften some of this to make it more accessible, and he suggested it would be a very good idea to lean into it, and like the tone of having those exotic words, essentially, as long as you use them in the right context, people can infer meaning from them, and it adds so much texture that it just felt like a good idea to just lean straight in.
Again, on that, because it is such a, again, quintessentially British of that thing, a lot of media is like based in America or American characters. Has it been quite weird in a way to like be completely immersed in a video game that is so like, oh, that's down the road? Yeah,
I mean, part of the process was to make sure that we pulled from the right well of references. Because we've got, you can literally travel up the road and visit the sorts of locations and talk to the sorts of people that are very similar to the characters in the game. That was helpful. But then also looking back to not only 50s, 60s British storytelling, but also going back to ancient Greek and Roman writings on the Druids for our Druidic characters in the game. It was great to have all that raw material to work with.
Oh, great. Well, I thoroughly enjoyed my time with it. I could really feel myself getting sucked in quite quickly. So I'm looking forward to release, but thank you very much for your time. It was a pleasure. And I believe we have a pint to sample.
We do, yeah.
Well, cheers to yourself.
Cheers.
Goes really good with my chewing gum.
Yeah.
The things you do for art.
Yeah.
And that's going to be everything from us today, folks. I hope you enjoyed those thoroughly professional journalistic questions. If you did enjoy the video, please do give us a thumbs up, share the video, and consider subscribing to the Radio Times Gaming YouTube channel. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.